I'm sharing a reading experience. I took down notes from Evolve Your Brain by Joe Dispenza, and I'm sharing them with you now. Watch your thoughts, words, and deeds. I used to think thoughts were important only to the extent that they were necessary for words and deeds. So, in my mind, a person's deeds and words were a reflection of his thoughts. As I've learned, this is incomplete and flawed. Every thought, no matter how small or fleeting, has an impact, like Ray Bradbury's The Sound of Thunder, or the illustration of the butterfly effect. Small, seemingly insignificant things can have an enormous consequence. In other words, out of small things proceeds that which is great. Every thought has a chemical signature with an associated feeling. Hebb's model shows thinking the same thoughts wires us to think those thoughts with less effort, or, in other words, playing the same programs in our mind time and time again will cause these programs to run more automatically. Our brain will require fewer stimuli to produce that same state of mind. The feedback loop of thoughts and feelings are intrinsically connected to the body. In fact, the body or the cardinal mind becomes addicted to a familiar host of chemicals produced when we have thoughts. The body will need a constant fix at a cellular level to keep things in chemical steadiness. The body enjoys chemicals, which makes it feel more alive and in a heightened state of awareness and energy. And because these feelings are familiar, we recreate affirmations for them. When we do implicit things like driving a stick shift, knitting, buttoning a shirt, or playing an instrument, we do them without conscious thought or the conscious mind. These circuits are so well wired into the cerebellum that these activities are like blinking or breathing. Because memories are linked to emotions, we can descend into habitual thoughts which plague us. For example, we see someone who reminds us of someone else and we jump from thought to thought until we feel unloved and unworthy. And if we are familiar with feeling unworthy, we will continue this feeling because it is a natural, easy way to feel. The University of Pennsylvania showed rapid fire pictures to depressed and normal people. For example, some of the pictures were people enjoying themselves at a party or a feast. Other pictures were depressing pictures like a funeral scene. Depressed people always remembered the coffin, but never the food. They saw their environment to reinforce how they felt. What we think, how we react, and how we judge other people is really a reflection about ourselves. If we try to overcome thoughts, the body voices displeasure. What do you mean you aren't making my chemicals? Whose smart idea was this anyway? Internal monologue pleads for immediate action to stop the chaos and return to normal. The voice of our body is like the gospel of our inner gardens. If we stop our habits, our thoughts, feelings, or reactions, we stop making the same chemicals, which sends the body into a state of imbalance. For example, if you tried to break the habit of chocolate, you would start out fine. But within hours, you start thinking about mom's double dark devil food cake. From nowhere, you recall when you ate chocolate covered strawberries. Then the time you were laid over for 5 hours at a Belgian airport and how you ate three desserts, all made of Belgium chocolate. We then find ourselves at mom's. She has a chocolate cake. We see it, we salivate. We tell ourselves, forget our foolish vows, and we consume the whole cake. The sight of the cake chemically stimulates the body to think about what it wants. You think, forget change. Why torture yourself? Besides, mom treated you like a slave. Eating the whole cake is the least you deserve. You should finish it off with ice cream with chocolate syrup on top. Besides, chocolate's full of antioxidants. It's good for you. What do you do? Cave in or hold on in spite of what you feel? If you cave in, you release chemicals which will reinforce who you've always been. If you hold on, you will be very uncomfortable not being yourself. Internally, you want to act and restore yourself to a comfortable state, even if this state makes you feel bad about yourself. Ever notice feeling frustrated makes you angry? And when you were angry, you hated. When you hated, you were judgmental. And when you were judgmental, you were jealous. And when you were jealous, you became envious. And when you were envious, you became insecure. As you felt insecure, you became unworthy. And when you felt unworthy, you felt guilty. That's eating the whole cake. You couldn't stop until you're chemically stimulated to get a greater rush. Many feed on a steady diet of upset and anger, followed by the dessert of remorse, topped with a good self thrashing. When you argue with your spouse, does it feel good? How about familiar? Same thing. Consider a case where a woman has always attracted the wrong type. No matter how many haystacks of good choices they have, they always seem to find the needle to prick their bubble of happiness. A typical episode of their marriage may go something like this. The husband says, do you mind if I watch the ball game? The wife says, it doesn't matter. And then continues the dialogue in her head that may go something like this. Do I mind? What kind of a question is that? Him and his stupid games, sitting there like this is some sort of life and death matter. Why do I even bother? He's never going to change. Picks on every little thing I do. Do I ever say anything about him? Sits there and criticizes. He does the same thing with the players. If he's so good, why doesn't he play? Imagine the chemicals that are being made to feed the body. When circumstances don't produce the needed chemicals, we'll do whatever we can, whatever we must, mentally or physically, to get them. Even if this couple were to divorce, the wife would still have the memories to get her chemical hits because the brain doesn't know the difference between experience and memories. The entire process of divorce would reinforce feelings of inadequacy and shame. She would be chemically addicted to the feelings of the relationship. In the vacuum created by divorce, she would usher in another candidate who would reproduce the wounds of the past, allowing her to maintain the chemical state she craves and has grown accustomed to. Others don't make you feel sad or unappreciated. You already felt that way. You simply create real or imagined circumstances in your life that will produce the chemicals to which you're addicted. The real question for this couple, if they're interested in change, is, are you aware that the two of you are addicts partying together? Are you aware you're using each other for your own selfish chemical needs? The past has a stronger grip on us because we can't compare the future to any feeling we've had before. The future has no feelings associated with it. Dreams and a future sense of adventure are quickly lost to the feelings and the memories of the past. The neurosynapses gets homesick. When we go back home, we think we're making the right choice because it feels right, at least at the moment. This is how we resist change and constantly re choose the familiar. When we give in, we're making choices with our cardinal body rather than our spiritual mind, and we won't change. Neuroscience acknowledges thoughts matter because thoughts literally become matter because every thought produces a biochemical reaction. These chemicals allow the body to feel exactly the way you're thinking. Releasing these chemicals produces a specific feeling to help you to remember, thus helping seal the past events. We feel the way we think and think the way we feel. When we think of a concern, our neural net is turned on. We then make chemicals to create feelings to reinforce our thinking. We then manufacture more chemicals to feed the body, the same chemical signals as if we were actually experiencing the event. The emotional states of being are a rich combination of feelings. These combined spicy feelings produce a full and multi layered flavor. According to neuroscience, paying attention to pain enlarges the pain because the part of the brain which perceives the pain is activated by our attention to that pain. In the same manner, attention to our past has the same effect. Thoughts start out as conscious ones, but ultimately become unconscious automatic thought programs. Unconscious ways of thinking become unconscious ways of being. The part of your brain which becomes hardwired by our repeated thoughts and reactions limits our vision of what's possible. When we live in survival mode, we choose to perceive threats, which produce stress chemicals that breaks down our cells. Stress also inhibits big thinking and our divine nature. We become animal like. This internal chemical state leads to confusion, unhappiness, aggression, depression, and so on. Consider how thoughts affect the chemical dance in the brain. Many choose to remain in the same circumstances because they're addicted to the emotional chemical state produced by that aroused state of being. Symptoms of emotional addictions are lack of focus, the inability to follow through on our plans to the end, a craving for routine experiences, and avoidance of novel experiences. It's also easy not to change. Behaving habitually takes no effort at all. So our brain stays the same because we do the same things. If we change the way we do things, the brain will change as well. A new, unknown experience would invoke new feelings threatening who we are. So the cardinal mind initiates the survival mechanisms of personality. Consider the attitudes of, I don't feel like doing the dishes, and I'd rather be in bed, versus, I'm glad I rinsed the dishes after dinner, and I'm so glad I stayed up and had this conversation. Attitude is a cluster of thoughts strung together, which in turn stimulates specific neurotransmitters to make us think, act, and feel certain ways. All of our emotional attitudes, the ones we believe are caused by something outside of ourselves, are the result of how we decided to perceive reality based on how we wanted to feel. If we react out of habit rather than conscious awareness or free will, how awake or alive are we really? Our freedom of choice determines what kind of mind we want. The frontal lobe is the least hardwired of all, which allows us to think, act, and choose differently. Knowledge is devoid of experience, but is the forerunner of experience. We gain knowledge so we can demonstrate it. New knowledge prepares us for new experiences. And the more knowledge we have, the better prepared we are for that experience. Knowledge and experience work together. Learning is the new relationship created between the neurons, and remembering keeps the relationship alive. When we apply knowledge, we have to modify our behaviors to create a new experience. When Albert Einstein left Germany, his wife said of their possessions, "I'm attached to them." Einstein replied, "But dear, they are not attached to you." Emotions are not attached to you because they are not your brain, and you don't need to identify with your emotions. Nerve cells hold hands in a three-dimensional web in new combination and sequences all the time, but it can't change itself without an intelligence, a spirit. The spirit is connected to God, who gives us life and can heal self-inflicted wounds. The moment you die, your body breaks down because your spirit, created by God, which gives the body's life force, has left. To some extent, those who get sick acknowledge at least a partial disconnect with God. Their ungodly attitudes took them away from health. They had to learn how to reconnect with God. When we use the expression mind over matter, it means we've decided to act on faith despite conventional thinking or obstructions. Where we place our faith maps the very course of our life and the life of our family. If you pay attention to your thoughts, you'll find the most persistent negative inner statements are not true. They're the ones you made up. We start to believe these lies, and then believing them becomes habit. These repetitive thoughts are like computer programs running day and night. Our thoughts and emotions create our reality. Therefore, we are responsible for this reality. To delete the perpetual loops of detrimental thinking and feeling, then feeling and thinking, and replacing them with the beneficial ones is to be greater than your environment. We can learn, change perceptions, and become a different person by literally making up a new mind. The frontal lobe endows humans with the virtue of conscious choice and free will, which can shut down old thoughts and form new ones at any age and at any time. When we are diligent about our thinking, we revitalize our lives where new attitudes become new habits. When we give up trying to change because we don't feel like it, our repetitive programs are in control and our frontal lobe has gone back to sleep. When we choose outside of our memory box, the frontal lobe is in its heightened state. When the frontal lobe is activated, it frees us from the repetitive or routine results so we can experience a different outcome. It takes time and effort to change. At first, the effort will be much, but when we align our intentions with our actions and match our thoughts with our behaviors, we evolve from knowledge to experience. We, for example, can lose our old mind of impatience and make one of patience by erasing the old synaptic footprints that make by making new ones. We must rehearse what this new patient person will be like by running scenarios through our head until it becomes a familiar way of being. We must also block out the critic who shows reruns of our most impatient moments. If we slip, we can mentally rehearse doing it the right way the next time, so the behavior is easier for us to do. As we practice, patience becomes more natural. This mental workout is creating a new mind. If we, for example, focus on becoming a more grateful person in our mental rehearsal, we will not only realize more things we have to be grateful for, but we will also witness more acts of gratitude. Rehearsal lays down tracks for a path to follow, rather than running rampant with unconscious programs we know so well. Practicing, demonstrating, and mentally rehearsing, combined with repetitive thoughts and consistent experiences, is a powerful way to escape from the enslavement of our environmental priming by microscopically molding new circuits. The frontal lobe activity is all about employing free will in making decisions and choices, planning our actions, and developing the future. Hardwired circuits and states of being always try to talk us out of change. Gita said, "For the one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for the ones who fail to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy." All we ever know is based on what we perceive. Few people discover that the habit of being depressed can just as easily be developed into the habit of being happy. Instead of being angry or any other favorite emotional addictions, we can rehearse being calm, compassionate, or any other positive trait. Changing the mind permanently and intentionally creates new outcomes because the mind no longer does the thing it typically does. Mastering periods of introspection allows us to pay better attention to internal mental imagery, allowing the brain to rewire faster. Mental rehearsal helps us to behave differently and is a declaration of who we are choosing to become. We remember how we want to be. When we change through repeated intent, we become greater than our environment. Our thoughts now control the environment rather than our environment creating our thinking. There's no fear of the unknown because our mind has created the outcome and has already experienced and recorded what is to come. By applying these principles, we cause the brain to be ahead of the environment. Our brain's no longer a record of the past, but of the future. By changing our minds and our state of being, we make different choices which we would never make as an old self. When we demonstrate a new expression of self, we will think and act in new ways. And as one choice leads to another, over time, we will find ourselves in a new life with new circumstances. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.